So we're down to one album left.
Yep.
We are. We are covering OUTKAST for the first time with their album ATLiens. And in the opening montage, you heard the title track, ATLiens, and now you're going to hear a clip from Jim. All right, so ATLiens by OUTKAST comes in at number 102 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 8 in 1996, number 604 of all time. It's OUTKAST's third highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind 2000's Stankonia and 1998's Aquemini, both albums that we will be covering in future episodes. ATLiens did not make Rolling Stone's list, and OUTKAST is ranked number 133 of overall artists on Best Ever Albums.
I do need to clean a stack there. I didn't know if it was there, but you said Stankonia, and I don't know if that was pronunciation, but I believe, Matt, you have to say that as Stankonia is
Stankonia.
Is the correct pronunciation there. So
there you go, John. Thank you.
Yes.
Stankonia. Yes. And that's one of the things I appreciate about OUTKAST is the way that the way they pronounce various words is always very interesting. But we'll get to that soon. So ATLiens is their second studio album, released on August 27th, 1996. A little history of OUTKAST. They were formed in 1992 in Atlanta by Antoine Patton, who goes by the stage name of Big Boy, and Andre Benjamin, who goes by Dre, and then, went by Dre and then later Andre 3000 to prevent him being confused with Dr. Dre. They met in 1992. They were 16. So if you guys do your math, when ATLiens came out, they were 20, which is pretty remarkable. They actually met in a mall. But they did attend the same high school, and at high school they would participate in rap battles in the cafeteria, and they got together and started, collaborating together, and they were pursued by a group of local music producers called Organized Noise, and they also had classmates that would go on to form Goody Mob. And with Organized Noise and Goody Mob, they would all go on to form an organization called the Dungeon Family Organization, which was a collaborative between many, artists in the Atlanta area, the southern area. TLC was part of that at one point in time. So throughout the years, they did a variety of collaborations that were actually done in one of the members' basements. The basement of his mother's house actually was where the studio recordings happened there. So there's a whole documentary on that, on the Dungeon Family. So you might want to check that out if you were interested. So there you go. That's a little offshoot there. But initial names that they thought about being called, Two Shades Deep and the Misfits, but they couldn't. They realized that those names were actually already taken, so they decided on OUTKAST, which was they found they were looking at synonyms for Misfit, and they came out with OUTKAST. They were soon signed to Babyface's label LaFace Records, and that became the label's first hip hop act, and that was in late 1993. Their first single was Players Ball, and that was released at that time. And their debut album, Southern Playalistic Music, was released in 1994. And they then won Best New Rap Group at the Source Awards in 1995. Actually, so this is a little bit later than that. And they were booed while taking the stage because it just wasn't what a lot of the people's cup of tea was. So there was a little bit of backlash against OUTKAST. Rapper T.I. was later quoted as saying, quote, "OUTKAST, period, OUTKAST. That's what it changed. That was the first time when people began to take Southern rap seriously."
So we haven't. Dre 3000 does the South is here, y'all. Like, is that the speech?
Yeah, he kind of came back. It was like, basically get used to it because we're not going away. We're not going anywhere. So yeah, I mean, we have other Southern rap. I know we did UGK not too long ago. Who was somewhat influential on Big Boy. We did who was the other horrorcore whatever album that we did? Yeah,
3-6 Mafia.
We did 3-6 Mafia. They were Southern, but we haven't done a ton of Southern rap. But this is
Jeff and I
OUTKAST.
did Goody Mob like in a episode one time. So
okay.
Ghetto Boys would be.
Oh, I guess they were Southern. Yeah.
Texas.
Okay.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Scarface.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sorry.
So I guess we've done more than I can remember. All right, so after their debut album, they started gaining some confidence, and they decided, and the record company gave them more autonomy, and they gave them more money for this record. So they did take over some of the production work. So I think there's like 4 or 5 tracks on here where Big Boy and Andre 3000 did the production. And actually, during this recording as well, Andre 3000 went back to high school and got his degree. And around this time, too, I think Big Boy became a father, and Andre 3000 broke up with a girlfriend that he had for a couple of years. So there was some other personal things going on there. This was an interesting quote. I don't know like where this comes from, because it also it talks about sampling. And it said that they kind of refrained from sampling. Although when I looked on Wikipedia, there was several samples, so I don't know exactly what that was talking about. But Big Boy did make a quote saying that I feel like you cheat the listener when you sample. If it's an old school jam, leave it to the old. We want to have our own school of music. So maybe they didn't do as much sampling maybe as they did on the previous record. But anyway, they tried not to do that as much. I would take it from that. So for this record, they aimed for a consistent set of songs, which the listener would not need to skip tracks. That's a novel idea, right? Let's just try to make a good record, right, where you don't want to skip anything. But they did. Than done. Yeah, exactly. Well, they wrote about 35 songs for the record, and so they cut it down to 14, which is what you get here. So you're getting some interesting lyrical content. It ranges from addressing urban life as hustlers and pimps to extraterrestrial life and space travel, and that can be seen on the cover as well, right? But that's kind of what they viewed themselves as kind of being this outcast, these aliens, like kind of taking things in a different direction, being unconventional, kind of really owning that type of that badge, if you will. So this record debuted at number 2 on the U.S. hip hop and R&B charts. It would eventually hit number 3 on the overall U.S. Billboard charts. It sold over 2 million copies. And I did like this little snippet. So Big Boy claimed that he didn't really like the production of the song Jazzy Belle. But Andre 3000 was so enthusiastic with the track that Big Boy was like, all right, fine, I'll go along with it. And I guess they also had an argument about whether or not to release Jazzy Belle as a single. Ultimately, Andre 3000 talked some sense according to Andre 3000, he talked some sense into Big Boy, but Big Boy later said that the only reason that he agreed to it was because Andre bribed him with cash. And Big Boy spoke about that in the 1999 interview. He talked about that when the main topic of the interview was Andre and his quote unquote weirdness. So I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, we're going to cover OUTKAST a couple more times. Certainly considered one of the more influential hip-hop acts out there. And we'll start with Josh. What's your take on ATLiens?
Yeah, OUTKAST is probably one of the most famous rap groups alive now, right? I think in terms of well-known in the popular culture. I heard this album before, but it's been a while. I think I became aware of them like everyone else in like Stankonia era, but then I went back and kind of quickly caught up to speed on them. And this album is just a great showcase for kind of what makes them unique and is a real turning point in terms of rap, and or at least a style of rap, a kind of a unique point of view of rap. I think OUTKAST has always kind of had that unique point of view. It is a weird album. I feel like the samples are really kind of unique and like eerie or like psychedelic in a way that a lot of other rap isn't. Especially compared to the rap that we've talked about up to this point, it is markedly different, I would say. I think Big Boy and Andre 3000 are both great rappers. I feel like Big Boy like sounds similar to Andre on this album. I feel like they kind of start sounding different on later albums. I'm misremembering, but I feel like they kind of
I have that exact note, Josh, that they sound shockingly similar.
Yeah, I think they become like more distinct voices. That's not to take away from like their ability, but I think I appreciate that more later on. They just have a way, they really have a way with words, and like, there was a Tears for Fears reference on one song that I remember, like, Andre makes historical references, like the pop culture kind of weaving in of things and the way he compares how they are, even just using like elevators as a way of them like rising up, in popularity and out of things. And as the title of the song is interesting. They're not afraid to, like, Wheels of Steel has this like Spanish guitar sample that's really interesting, and they're playing off of one each other, and their way of having this like slowed down vibe that is not as slow as like Houston rap, but it's also it is like this like slow Southern feel to it. It's a bit more relaxed in a way. They're not also not really rapping about crime and, contrast to like Nas's This Week or some of the other things. They are talking about like life on the streets and stuff, but in a different way. And I think they sprinkle in some other Dungeon family members here to guest star, and I think those are used pretty effectively. But I like that it's still ultimately like more them, and I feel like they are the highlight. I guess what I'm saying is I didn't feel like the guest rappers like really blew me away or like elevated. I feel like I was still just kind of really impressed with them. And it's a solid album. I didn't get bored with it. That they always kept my attention. There maybe towards the end, that kind of last track I could take or leave, but overall, it's like a little like weird marijuana infused journey that this album like takes you on. Like it's kind of like trip in the way that trip hop is. Like it's definitely like almost like a night album in a way, although you can listen to it anytime. But it's got like this weird like, I don't know, it kind of puts you in a weird headspace if you like sit back and listen to it. So in a good way. But yeah, I liked it. I'm excited to revisit more OUTKAST in the future. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I didn't know. Like, I know the 4 albums that follow this very well, and this one, like, I knew OUTKAST was releasing albums before, the bit like Speaker Box, Love Below,
right,
and Aquemini, and stuff like that. But I really hadn't explored them, kind of. And so this was an interesting listen. I'm glad we did this. I feel a lot like this album, like I felt about the Roots and Common albums we've covered, that there's a lot of the blueprint of what I like about these groups. And there's a couple songs that you're like, oh yeah, you can see, the formative, like ATLiens is, to me, by far the best song on this album. It's like undeniable. It's like, it's what OUTKAST like becomes later, right? With the big time tracks off of that. It's not to say there aren't other songs I like on this, but like it's like, oh yeah, this is like the Used to Love Her by Common, right? Like on his album, where you're like, oh, this lays the foundation of like, he's got this in him, right? Like, and this is like OUTKAST has it in them to write a song that's like this undeniably catchy. Thematically, it is similar to like what I always think of as OUTKAST, which is like 1/3 drug references, like 1/3 weird, like off the beaten path sort of references, like almost like philosophical slash stuff, and like 1/3 super horny, like graphically horny, right? Like, because this has every bit the level of like horniness in it that others do. It's just because they're so playful, right? And talk about like aliens and stuff that you miss, like, that if you're not paying attention. But you're right, Josh, they have a way with like a turn of phrase, like how they say things is very funny, and how they put rhyme schemes together cracks me up, especially Andre 3000, because even within a run of his own lyrics, it alternates between drugs, weird philosophy, and sex, like in a like 10-bar sequence, right, along the way. Whereas like Big Boy spends a little bit more time in what I would call like the traditional lanes, you know what I mean? Like sex and like, thug life. And even when you listen like later to Speaker Box and The Love Below, right? Like they wear their influences on their sleeve a little bit. So I like this album. I do think it's a little bit, it's not them at their peak. It's almost like like a baseball player who has like a great rookie season. They're not one of the top 15 players in the league, but you see all the tools and you're like, they're going to become a superstar down the road. And that's how I feel kind of about this album. Knowing that they're 20, right, also informs this a little bit too, because they're at the nebulous stage of their career. I do like that Big Boy is like, he's part like, he's such a funny thing because he's like part guy who can induct Kate Bush into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's like a audiophile, you know what I mean? And part dude who writes like at least 1 or 2 songs about like going to the strip club 3 times a week. Like, and he's like both of those things at the same time, which kind of cracks me up a little bit. And he always feels to me like he and Andre 3000 have such an interesting like southernness to them as well, that you can see how they're the group that transcended Southern hip hop, the first group really to do it, right? Because they're undeniably Southern, but they also have like an appeal that doesn't like niche them in the way that maybe like No Limit, right? Or Cash Money, or like the Houston rappers, or like Luther Campbell, right? Where it's like, if you're listening to that in like New York, right? Or Chicago, there's like, it's like you might like the songs, right? But it's like, this is almost like another world than like where I come from, right? Whereas like OutKast sort of belongs to the larger world, I'd say. So I enjoyed this. I do think it went like almost every album in the 90s, it goes a little bit too long. And I do think the second half of the album isn't as strong as the first half of the album. But I do respect the fact that they are always trying to put their own beats in. And I think that's why later in particular, they stumble into so many memorable beats, because they tinker a lot with it. And if I remember correctly, Big Boy is largely the beat maker, right? Like more so than Andre.
I believe so.
Yeah. So I would give this a thumbs up, but also knowing what's coming, I can't say that it holds the same like level of quality to me that like what we're going to be coming to later does.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I didn't know this record really. I knew ATLiens. I had heard that song before, and I agree with you, John. That is the main standout song on this. That's when I heard that I was like, oh, I love this song, and that's kind of like the play on the words, the way that they say ayer and wave just like kayer, you know, and oh yeah, like it's just the way that they just, their tone, their inflection of words, how they can kind of twist a sound and make it kind of fit in with the beat, or fit in with the, you know, to rhyme with another word. It's just, it just sounds great. Their voices are fantastic. It's like one of the first things that kind of jumps out at me with them, and their flow, right? Like it's so fast, and it's just, and a lot of times it's hard to, it's my brain doesn't catch up with what they're saying, because it's just coming at you so fast, and it's like, wait, I'm picking up little pieces here and there, but it's hard to really catch it all, right?
But so with relaxed syllables too. That's the funny thing. They're fast, but they're undeniably Southern, which seems like it should go slow. So that's such an interesting contrast.
Yeah. And I think like this is more so like I still probably need to do this for pretty much all music, is like to sit down to, like, if I'm going to focus on the lyrics and like read them as it's happening. But this one's even more so just because of how fast it's just coming at you, like machine gun pace, right? And it's amazing that they're able to kind of do that, and without taking a breath or without stumbling over themselves. Like I always wonder, like how easy is this for them to do that, right? Does it just come naturally? Is this something you practice? Like I don't know. It's something I never really thought about, but I do when I hear them. So I very much do like OutKast is one of the, you know, one of the hip hop acts that I've really, it's probably one of my favorites, I would say, over the years. There's something about them, that the creativity, the uniqueness, the spin that they put on stuff. You know, it really resonates with me. So I was hoping to like love this record. And unfortunately I didn't. I kind of have similar takes that you guys have, that it's still very good. But I was actually struggling to find like the second single to put, like what is the other song that I'm going to put on this, because ATLiens was like definitive, and then there was like, it really could have been just about any other song, because my level of interest or affinity for the rest of the songs was all kind of the same, right? Everything else kind of fell together in the same kind of like category. Maybe the exception of Elevators, Me and You, but that was a little bit, that might have been my least favorite song on here, which I found it interesting that was a single. I just, something about the chorus, I didn't really, the chord, the melody didn't really hit me too well. And the fact that they did it twice, right? So at the end of the song, they kind of do like a reprise of that at the end, which I might have liked that mix of it better, but it didn't really move the needle a whole lot for me. But having said that, there's certainly elements throughout that I did like, and this is definitely like a mellow record, right? There's not a whole lot of bangers on here that you're going to play at the club. This is, it's a very mellow sound. I kind of appreciate some of the different production choices that they make, and and there is like a spacey vibe to it, so you can definitely hear that coming through as well. So points to them for kind of taking it a little bit of a different direction. But yeah, like I know. I guess Stank on Ya. Like I like that, John. I like the way they pronounced that. Like that album I know really well. I love that record. The Speaker Box, Love Below, and even Aquemini, even though I never owned that, I remember listening to that, a buddy's copy of that a couple of times. So there's plenty of those things that stuck out. So this is, I agree with you. I think, John, that this is a little bit more of the framework of like what they're about to become, and what they're about to do. But certainly there's lots of people, like I've seen, reviews of this, that this is my favorite OutKast record, or this is the most interesting OutKast record or whatever. I don't know if I would agree with that. Maybe it's something I need to listen to more, but I also I don't know if I listen to this like 4 or 5 or 10 more times, if I'm going to get more out of it than I'll probably a little bit more out of it, but I don't know if I would get it to that point where I'm like, okay, it's jumping to this other level, because those other records are just so freaking good, that I find it hard to believe that more listens would get me there with this. But it's an interesting record. I could go back to it here and there, but I guess I'm a little disappointed, because I was hoping to love this record, and I can't say that I did. But the elements are still there. Their chemistry, their charisma, their style, their flow, their avant-gardeness, it all is here. And I think that those are some of the more interesting and compelling things with them. It's just that the music and the beats aren't quite, the vibe isn't quite hitting, as it will in further episodes. So it's still a thumbs up, but just kind of interesting. It threw a little curveball at me. I wasn't really expecting this really kind of toned down mellow vibe, but still good, still interesting.
Good stuff.